To kick things off, let's talk about the VRAM requirements for gaming. Understanding this is crucial for optimizing your visual experience.
6GB GPUs are the bare minimum for 1080p low with an FPS target of 40 to 60 FPS, while 8GB being the most common option that is best for 1080p high. With some help from upscaling, you should get over 60 FPS. However, when choosing cards on the mid-range and over, then the more VRAM you get, the better, as this opens up options of gaming on higher resolutions. For 1440p, the VRAM sweet spot is 12GB, as this should give you 2 to 3 more years of gaming before you need to upgrade. For 4K resolutions, then 16GB and above is best, but you will obviously have to pay the VRAM tax since 16GB cards don't.
Next, let's delve into some real-world performance comparisons. Spoiler, VRAM does matter significantly.
We have Forza at max settings, MSAA x8. So first we tested at 1080p and we were using about 8GB of VRAM. We got an average of 32.6 FPS, a 1% low of 25.9 and a 0.1% low of 11.9 FPS. The 8GB card at the same settings got 35.2 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 27.5 and a 0.1% low of 22.8 FPS. So the 8GB card outperforms the 16GB card by a fair amount here. However, having said this, I did get some memory warnings on the 8GB card, which I did not get on the 16GB card. And sure enough, when I turned the game up to 1440p, the 16GB RX 580 was now using about 9GB of VRAM and getting 24.5 FPS on average, whereas I couldn't even get the game to work at 1440p or 4K on the 8GB card. And then at 4K, the RX 580 16GB was getting about 16.7 FPS on average, using 10GB of VRAM. At least we now know that this card does have 16GB, as it's usually more than 8GB in games.
As we look deeper, it becomes clear that VRAM isn't all about performance. It can also indicate whether a card is right for future gaming demands.
So this is pretty bad, but at least the RX 580 8GB performed worse, at just 6.5 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 5.1 and a 0.1% low of 4.9 FPS.
Wrapping up our analysis, let's summarize what we've learned about making the right choice in GPUs given these findings.
Don't come cheap. The conclusion here is get as much VRAM as your budget allows you to, as this is actually a case of more is always best. However, pay attention to the performance of the cards as well, as this could also prove to be an issue if you plan on gaming on higher resolutions. For example, in a choice between an RTX 4060 Ti 16GB and an RX 7700 XT 12GB, then the RX 7700 XT is the better choice, as it outperforms the 4060 Ti. Just because the 4060 Ti has 16GB of VRAM doesn't mean it's a 4K gaming GPU, so it might have the VRAM to run higher textures than a 12GB card, but the card itself is still a low-end card that can't take advantage of the larger amount of VRAM, so the clear option here would be the RX 7700 XT with 12GB of VRAM from Team Red. The fourth mistake on our list is don't overpay for the same card. The range of video cards is extensive, with every board partner making their own designs unique to their brand.
So remember, when selecting your GPU, do not just count GBs, but think strategically about how they will meet your gaming performance needs in the future.